The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, this is Evelyn Ray with CyberHive Security. I'd like to welcome you to the Netwrix Auditor webinar. We're going to be exploring how to mitigate IT security risks and protect your sensitive data. But first, we have a few housekeeping items. We have all attendees on mute, but please ask your questions. Questions will be answered during the session or at the Q&A at the end, and you'll receive a copy of the slides and webinar recording in the follow-up. The duration of this webinar is about 60 minutes. The agenda for today, I'll be introducing Netwrix. We'll have a product overview by Ken Tripp of Netwrix Corporation, and Charles Housley will be giving our product demonstration, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I'm Evelyn Ray. I'm the CEO of CyberHive Security and a partner with Netwrix. CyberHive Security, we have a motto here: we're taking security by swarm. We have a collaborative effort of cybersecurity professionals, consultants, clients, vendors all across the country in all different verticals, all combating various threats across an ever-widening surface landscape, threat landscape. Protecting sensitive data or confidential data from hackers and human error is critical. A few things that we focus on at CyberHive Security is security program strategy, enterprise risk and compliance, enterprise incident management, and managed services and security awareness, among many other things. But right now, let me introduce, talk about our partnership. The reason we partnered with Netwrix is because they have a sharp focus on visibility and governance that's earned them over 100 awards. Their strategic vision has caused Netwrix to grow and be noticed for their exceptional work in ensuring companies have a sure-footed handle on compliance in the systems that need to be audited across the enterprise. It's an honor to partner with Netwrix and to bring my clients a proactive approach to compliance and critical information on threat patterns so that they can focus on keeping their businesses running. So now I'd love to turn it over to Ken Tripp from Netwrix. Thanks.
Great. Evelyn, thank you so much for the nice introduction. And again, we'll make sure to go through this so you can see not only a brief introduction of Netwrix, but the demonstration, and leave any time for any questions and answers that you might have. So really, just to kind of briefly describe Netwrix, who we are, Netwrix was born in the change auditing space, right? So we're enabling controls over changes, configurations, access, who has permissions to what, and we do that by providing the security analytics, what we call the actionable data, who did what, when, and where inside of the environment. We allow you to detect anomalous behavior in a variety of ways, which Charles will show you through our risk assessment, behavior analysis, threshold alerting across all of our platforms. And of course, too, we then take our CAN reports and map them directly to compliances, be it HIPAA, SOX, PCI, GLBA, GDPR, etc. And that really allows you to create a continuous compliance model. So as I click through here, there we go. This is a basic evolution of our product, and we were founded back in 2006. And really, as you see it, we were just looking at basic auditing tools and reports, and we moved all the way over now to really providing you a way to strengthen the security posture from the inside out. And recently, we introduced data discovery and classification as well. The data discovery and classification portion is something that actually resides outside the Netwrix platform, but we do integrate with it. And what you're seeing here is actually the unified platform itself. And this is really a unique differentiator for us in the marketplace. All the applications in front of you reside on that platform, and this allows you to trace a user's actions across multiple applications in a single pane view of glass. Looking at just some of the highlighted applications, a differentiator for us as well is that everything comes out of the box. So you'll see some of our competitors basically put state and time or change rollback wizards as separate features. Everything under that Active Directory portfolio you see comes out of the box, as well as Exchange, Office 365, Windows file servers as well. So when we're looking at our data discovery and classification, one of the major things that we wanted to make sure we provided our end clients was the ability to do compound search and greatly reduce the false positives that has kind of plagued that market space for some time. So we're consistently, accurately applying controls to give you the information of where your sensitive data lies. We integrate it to the auditor to provide you reports embedded with predefined taxonomies as well. And we'll take a look at that as the demonstration goes on. So with that too, very important to note that we do have a Netwrix API, and it's a RESTful API that's available to all of our customers. So this allows us to provide an add-on store for you for things outside of the native applications with Netwrix, be it Linux, Seams, Splunk, Logarithm, QRadar, Amazon Web Services. So that is a push-pull data in, data out Netwrix API that is available to all of our customers. And then looking at what's unique about us, right? That integrated platform is really what sets us apart, the non-intrusive architecture. One of the big things too, if you're dealing with compliance, is the cost-effective two-tiered storage. So we store everything in a flat file base and then also in the SQL database. The SQL database you can retain for 3, 6 months, whatever you like, but always go back to that flat file base, pull in archive data, and report on it. So very cost efficient, the accuracy of our data classification, and then we're looking at noise-free intelligence. We are not alerting like the 4th of July, some say, right? So we allow you to customize those alerts, knowing that when you get information from Netwrix, it's something that's important to you and that you need to take action on. Some of our customers basically go from various verticals. Really, at the Microsoft critical applications exist inside of the environment, Netwrix is definitely a fit. You'll see here that we put up some of the major logos that we've captured as clients, and that for you is just to prove that our technology is scalable. So when we're looking at the different benefits, it's the data security threats both on-prem and the cloud, passing compliance audits, and then increasing that productivity of your operations teams. So when we're looking specifically at the data security side of things, being able to discover, classify, secure that sensitive information, alerts on those threat patterns or behavior analysis, risk assessment, privilege abuse, who has permissions to what. Basically, again, strengthening that core security foundation inside of your environment. And when we're looking at passing compliance audits, mapping, you'll see our subscription reports, creating a continuous compliance model to promote best security standards across different compliances and across various verticals. And then, of course, just on the operations side, time, labor, and cost. How quickly can we simplify those reporting routines and speed up that report of the delivery, optimize the workflows, engage that API, and just getting the visibility of what is happening in your environment. Basically, it all comes down to maintaining that good IT hygiene via Netwrix. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Charles Housley. He is our Netwrix engineer, and he'll run you through a high-level demonstration of the Netwrix Auditor. Charles?
Thanks, Ken. Just give me 1 second to change over screens. Could you confirm real quick that you can see my screen, Ken?
Yes, I can. Needs to be enlarged, but looks good, or maybe just enlarged on my end.
Yeah,
yes.
There we go. Let me just take that away real quick. All right, perfect. So this is the main console you'll come to for your reporting and all the different features. We put it all together so that you don't have to hop through a bunch of solutions that have been pasted together from server to server or tab to tab. But going ahead and diving straight into the reporting piece, because that's kind of where we were born, and that's where we'll start the building of the functionality that you're going to see. What we've done is we've sorted the reports out, as Ken mentioned earlier, into the Microsoft Critical Stack applications that we can support, and then the different compliance standards that we can assist with as well. So you pick a compliance standard that corresponds with, whatever client you're trying to monitor. So if you have a small financial institution that requires PCI compliance, you can click on this and you can see that we've summarized the different requirements of that compliance standard and then given you access directly to a more detailed mapping document that's going to map out all the different requirements of this standard. And as we scroll through here, you can see that what we've done is we've listed out what the requirement is and then mapped you over to control processes over here on the side. So you can click into those, actually get a detailed explanation of how to implement the control to maintain that compliance, and then map directly to the reports that will provide proof that you're actually complying with that standard. But backing out of here, the last thing we do is we also sort out the critical stack reports that correspond with technologies up in the above list, and we pull them down here underneath the standard. So you just pick the report that corresponds with technology that exists in the infrastructure you're trying to monitor. So if you're not looking at a situation where you have Azure AD, but you have Active Directory on premise, then you would want to use that report. And to kind of introduce you to that format, what we've done here, and this is an all AD changes report, so it's going to grab all changes, modifications, additions, deletions, top level down. And we're going to put them in our format so you can see things like this user added a computer to this layer of Active Directory. When there's a modification, we'll detail the modification, and if there is a before value that was changed, we will define it. If it's just a value getting removed, we'll list it out. So it's very easy to roll those changes back because you have sort of a change management process that you have documented. You can then filter through these reports based on who did what, when, and where, and you can subscribe to any of these reports as well. With that, this is specifically helpful from a compliance standpoint, or just if you find a report that you don't want to go in and pick every day, you want it just automatically submitted to you, because you can decipher and decide which format you want to see the report in, and then specify recipients by email address, or just have these reports spit over automatically to a file share. You can then schedule them to come out daily, weekly, or monthly automatically, and we give you direct access to the filters so that you can customize the report to fit the individual environment that you're trying to take a look at. That way, it doesn't just kind of have to be a one-size-fits-all type solution. The other reason we do this is so that you can mirror our reports into alerts, and I'll explain that as we go further into the demonstration. But backing out of here and going ahead and hopping out of the compliance standard section, I just showed you the all Active Directory changes report, and there's multiple different change reports in here. They all look basically the same. They just treat different individual use cases. So you use the reports that correspond with needs that you find. But where we start to uniquely identify ourselves is with this Active Directory state and time information. This is our legacy information. Who has access to what through AD, and how is that access being granted? So on a report like this group membership report, this is going to show us all of the groups in my monitored infrastructure and who are the members of those groups. So I can use this to make sure that the membership of my groups, for one, is staying something that I am happy with, and two, because we're storing it as a snapshot, we can pull past versions up and put them up next to current versions to show positive or negative progress when we're talking about, reshaping an environment to be more compliant. The other reason we do this is because with that snapshot data, it can be rolled into our Active Directory change rollback wizard. With this, we can look at specific date ranges based on state and time snapshots that we've taken, and then we can roll back any changes that happened during the time in question. So I haven't had any changes in the last day, but if changes have happened, they'll roll up here and you'll be able to roll them back as far as if it's a single attribute change against a user, so just a phone number, or somebody got deleted. You need to roll them back with the same password, user ID, all of those things staying the same so that you don't have a production impacting event. You can roll those things back very, very easily. Now, stepping out of here, we also enable a similar but still unique view into file servers. Same two types of data, but from the changed data, we're looking at general user activity against the file shares, and then, of course, your administrative changes against permissions and shares. With that, we're looking at specific types of user activity. We do have an all file server activity that just encompasses everything happening, but we're looking more specifically at things like file and folders being moved, because most help desks deal with the problem at least on a week-to-week basis of getting calls from users saying, where's my file? Because we're using before and after values in the data that we're grabbing, we can actually see, well, the file was moved from here to here. So now that 2-hour phone call that may end in your help desk having to contact a sysadmin and restore a backup instead is very quickly and easily over, because they can go to this report, see exactly where the file is, and have the end client on their way without anybody getting their time wasted. But we're also looking at failed activity, and if you're alerting on failed activity and following up, there's multiple great use cases here, because based on what people are failing to do, either A, they're trying to gain access to resources that, in all honesty, they're just being too nosy and they're potential bad actors, or it's access they actually need, and you'll call them up and say, hey, we just got this failed access request from you. Could you add some intelligence to that, and it's either, like I said, they're being bad actors, or they just needed the access, and they can provide that proof. Then you can grant them the access, and all of a sudden your SLA times are in the negative because you're following up on these problems before they even exist. You can see that we're containing it in our same format that you saw in the other report. We can see that it's a modification that was failed to make against this specific share by this user from this workstation. So enabling that full 360-degree view without crushing you with data. But hopping out of here, and there's multiple different use cases divided up against the different applications in here, and we can definitely dive into any of them deeper that you may have questions about. But I've also been mentioning alerting, and I want to make sure I build on some of the other functionalities of the product. So with the alerting piece, we have tons of pre-configured alerts. So you can see all of these here. I didn't set them up. They're available out of the box. You can just turn them on, drop an email or a phone number in here and start alerting on this activity. But if you don't see activity in here that corresponds with what you want to monitor, you can build your own alerts. Like I mentioned, you can specify recipients by email or a phone number, and then you can build the filters yourself. And this is where you can mirror the existing filters that you have access to in reports, or you can build your own based on your needs. So if I'm worried about, say, ransomware, for instance, I would want to point this alert directly at my file servers, and then ransomware would be indicated by a double action. So I'll open those both up, and I know that those are going to be modifications and failed modifications. So I've just built a very simple ransomware alert, but then I need to bind a threshold to it. In this specific environment, if I ever see 120 file modifications in a 60-second period, that's not a human in my environment because I've only got 12 people, none of them using the file servers that much. You can sculpt this to fit the different environments, but based on that threshold, I can then bind a script, a response action to it to say, if this, then this. If we see this that is definitely ransomware, then lock that user out, cut access to the file share, throw the file share in read-only mode. Figuring out how you want to script that out. That option is definitely there, and if you don't want to do it, you can leave it off and not ever have to worry about it. But then you also will bind a risk score so that any user that trips any alert that has a risk score defined with it will roll up into a behavioral analytics tracking database right here. So with that, we can graphically track all of a user's potential bad actions across the infrastructure so that you can dive into them, see in more detail what they've been doing that we consider risky. And not necessarily saying that all these people are bad actors or are going to cause a problem, but definitely saying that you need to keep your eyes on these people because they're either ignorant to policy or they have, they definitely have some bad motivations. And if you are watching and remediating against these actions, then you could potentially prevent a catastrophic event in the future. But backing out of there, all of this rolls up into the interactive search, which is kind of our Google search for your monitored environment. You have the ability to look through and basically Google anything. You can build out custom queries here so that you can actually see what kind of data an alert is going to generate for you. But if that doesn't work, you can also just do simple basic who did what, when, and where searches. So if I have questions about a specific user and I just want to see all of his activity, I can search for his Active Directory credentials and pull all of the activity records that he's done. But looking here, I don't really care about his interactive logon activity, so I'm going to exclude that from the search. But then looking through the rest of this, right here up top, an Exchange database modification. He shouldn't even have that access. Let me make this inclusive because I want to see everything he's done in Exchange. 3 simple events I can click in and get before and after values for the changes that he made and start to actually account for this data. Now, if this is data I need to be monitoring or I build a search in here that I need to monitor on a more regular basis, I actually have the ability to turn it into a custom report or a custom alert. That way I can, again, start to sculpt the solution to fit the infrastructure that I'm monitoring. So there's definitely several pieces there. But backing out of there, the last kind of piece that we've done is we've pulled these main reports that you see here on the front screen. One of them to start with is the enterprise overview, which is more of a C-level report because it gives us a graphical representation of all the different changes made across an infrastructure, just to kind of provide to the higher tier people at the organizations that you're monitoring to say, this is the number of changes that I am dealing with on a day-to-day basis. This is the information that I'm looking at and keeping and being held accountable for. And we can track that information by date, by data source, by user, or by server. And it's all interactive. So if you are using it for yourself, you can click in on dates where you see a higher than average number of changes and actually get a detailed list by data source of what those changes were on that date. So there's many, many uses there. But then we've also pulled a lightweight risk assessment onto this screen. Based on predefined filters that we find risky, we give you access to looking at this information in this format. So seeing things like user accounts with passwords set to never expire. We're color coding all of the risks so you can see how risky something is. But then you can actually sculpt the risk to hit your environment. So you can define what is risky in your environments, again, so it's not just a one-size-fits-all approach. With that, if you have a question about any of the risks you see here, you can dive in and actually get a list of what the risks are. And in the instances inactive user accounts risk, you can pull up the inactive user tracking system and you can actually take actions against inactive accounts by OU, such as after 15 days, let's randomize the password. Let's disable the account at 20, delete it at 30 days. You can make those different choices and define those actions so that you automate the cleaning of Active Directory in this case. But then the last piece I want to show you it integrates with the Auditor, and that's the data classification and discovery piece. So with that, we've pulled the main data classification reports into the Auditor, and we're able to actually crawl data in file shares, SharePoint on-prem solutions, SharePoint on. There's multiple different sources that we can crawl using taxonomies to look for sensitive data. So in instance, this sensitive file count by source, because of the back-end crawling engine, which I'll detail for you in just a minute, you can see that this is the source that I'm crawling, and I have all of this data spread out based on the taxonomies I'm scanning with. So I have 781 PCI documents. But because I have file server auditing, I'm not as concerned with most of these shares because it's okay to be in most of these shares. But the public share, I'm pretty sure the Everyone group has access to. So I want to see what these 16 PCI documents are in the public share. Coming down through here, I need to address several of these things, but the most documents are concentrated in the incoming section of the public share. So I can click in and get fully qualified UNC pass of what the documents are and what kind of data they were classified with, so that I can then start to take some actions against that and confirm what that data is. But then also using the existing reports to look at things like overexposed files and folders, answering that question of who does have access to my sensitive areas. And can I provide accountability for their access to those areas? Through a report like this, you can, because what we're going to wind up seeing is that, well, in this instance, the Everyone group actually has access to my finance share as well as my public share. I knew about the public share and I needed to clean that up, but I didn't know about the finance share. So I can drill in and actually see more details of that access and act on them. And these are all very nice reports for this, but to also tie in, I want to show you the back end configuration manager for the DDC solution. And what this is where you can really start to sculpt the DDC engine to fit your environment. So we point at a source and we crawl it with our taxonomies. And those taxonomies are they're called the compound search taxonomies, because we're using regular expressions and child clues to make classifications. So you can see that we're opening up all these documents and we're looking for these specific child clues and this regular expression to define an American Express card, which is definitely a PCI document. With that, what we've done that's kind of different in this space is a lot of companies that are handling taxonomies and DDC solutions, they treat their taxonomies as intellectual property, so they don't give you access to them. We don't do that because we want you to be able to edit the taxonomies. So you have the ability through looking at this solution to edit existing taxonomies and build your own. That way, again, the common theme is being kept up that you are sculpting the solution to fit the environment in question that you're monitoring. So with that, there are multiple different ways that we can approach this. One of the reasons that this was released was for the GDPR concerns in the European Union and now the new California Privacy Act here at home. With that, we had to introduce the ability to search against the taxonomies for data because we have to guarantee the right to be forgotten through this software. So if a user calls you up and says you need to remove all of their data from the share, you can search for their name and actually pull that data up live and see exactly what is contained in it, why it got classified, and actually start to take action against that and provide that proof of deletion as well. The other thing we've done is through the taxonomies, we've given the ability to graphically track how data is tied together in a file share. On my public share, you can see that I have a lot of credit card information. I have 531 classified Visa cards. I need to be able to account for this information and how it's connected through my file share. So we've provided the ability to do that. I mean, we could spend hours on the back end of the crawling engine doing the different configurations because there are multiple different options we have here. It's really a pretty robust solution. But in the interest of time, that was what I would normally show in a pretty high level demo. So please, if you have any questions, throw them in the question box, and we will answer them as they come in.
Hey, Charles, so I saw one pop up already, and that was just basically the requirements for the product on the back end.
Absolutely. So for the Netwrix Auditor, and of course it's going to change based on the amount of activity in an environment and the size of the environment, but just picking a standard, what we would normally see, a mid-sized environment, somewhere between 1 and 5,000 users, monitoring Active Directory file servers and Windows servers. Generally speaking, we want 2 to 4 cores on the server that's hosting this, whether it's in a personal cloud or if it's an on-prem server. 2 to 4 cores, 8 to 16 gigs of RAM, and depending on the number of activity records, somewhere between 150 and 800 gigs of space available on the hard drive of the Netwrix Auditor server. We will then be touching a SQL server for reporting. So whether if it's a sub 150 user environment, we can do SQL Express, but over that we would need a full-blown SQL server. And if that's an already existing server in use, that's fine too. We just need somewhere to store the databases. And then if you go with the DDC solution, which is the reports that you saw in here, and then this crawling engine actually sits on a separate server from the auditor because it is a pretty hefty thing that it's doing when you think about it. It's actually opening up all these documents and crawling the data. That piece would require a second server that has mirrored resources of the first, somewhere between 8 and 16 gigs of RAM, 2 to 4 cores, and not as much hard drive space. You really only 150 to 200 gigs of hard drive space on that server. Hopefully that gives you all the information you needed. If we have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the box.
Yeah, it looks like there's another one here that I can take from Hasbrook McCall. Is the data discovery and classification model or module included with the file server plan? So no, they're separate applications. So basically you do need the file server application to launch the data discovery and classification module as well. So briefly overall on the licensing, all the applications can be purchased a la carte. We have subscription and perpetual models for them. For the most part, the applications are licensed based on the enabled Active Directory users in the environment. An exception, obviously, is going to be Office 365, which is looking at mailboxes. When we look at our new Netwrix Auditor for network devices, that's based on devices, obviously, but for the most part, it's on the AD enabled. But yes, the data discovery and Windows file server plan are separate applications. So with that, are there any other questions before we end today's session? And as we don't see any popping in, obviously, if there's questions that do arise, feel free to contact Evelyn at CyberHive. She will definitely be able to provide you the answers that you need, and she'll always have us as a resource if we have to go more in depth on a demonstration for you. But we greatly appreciate your time and interest today in Netwrix. Evelyn, thank you so much for setting this up. We have a great partner in CyberHive.
Yep, thanks for having it.
You got it, great. So thank you all, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Evelyn, thanks.
Thanks, take care everybody.